For nearly 80 years, global stability relied on a sprawling network of treaties, alliances, and handshakes. Then came 2025. A new, strictly transactional America First agenda took hold, dismantling that multilateral system piece by piece. Now we enter 2026. The initial shockwaves have passed, and the brutal new mechanics of global power are finally coming into focus. To understand where our security, our money, and our borders are actually heading, we need to map out three distinct structural contours: democracy, geopolitics, and the economy. Operating without an understanding of these three pillars leaves you completely exposed to the incoming volatility. We start with the first contour. As the United States approaches its 250th anniversary, its core institutions are undergoing a live stress test. The executive branch is pushing massive domestic experiments. We are seeing vast logistical operations, like the rapid construction and deployment of multi-state mass deportation camps. As the 2026 midterm elections approach, the battle over election integrity is intensifying. The administration is actively bypassing legislative roadblocks by relying on favorable rulings from the nation's highest courts. But there is an alternative, more optimistic scenario. The American system has a deep capacity to absorb shocks. The sheer friction of federal bureaucracy slows down radical action, and the strict economic need for high-skilled foreign labor is already forcing quiet, bipartisan compromises behind closed doors. This scatterplot tracks the historical trend of the president's party losing seats in the House of Representatives during midterms. If that historical backlash holds, a divided government will effectively cap the administration's most aggressive domestic plans. American democracy will not collapse this year, but it will be stretched to its absolute constitutional limits. For businesses, this translates to a highly erratic and unpredictable regulatory environment. That brings us to our second contour. On the global stage, long-standing ideological alliances have been replaced by isolated, transactional deal-making. Beijing is moving quickly to exploit American isolationism. Xi Jinping is aggressively pushing Chinese global tech monopolies and steadily increasing the military pressure on Taiwan. Yet that external aggression masks severe internal vulnerabilities. China is currently battling deep, structural economic deflation that threatens its domestic stability. Further west, the conflict in Ukraine drags on. Vladimir Putin is operating without a coherent theory of victory. The Russian battlefield strategy has devolved into a pure war of attrition, throwing endless waves of troops into a meat grinder, relying entirely on the hope that Western financial backers eventually lose their patience. And in the Middle East, the fighting in Gaza has left behind a sprawling landscape of destroyed infrastructure. There is no grand peace plan in motion here, only a precarious, heavily militarized stalemate. International law no longer guarantees global security. Today, stability rests entirely on the temporary, fragile handshakes of individual strongmen. Finally, we examined the third contour, the economy. Markets have surprisingly defied the doomsayers so far, but 2026 is littered with massive economic tripwires. This bar chart outlines the projected U.S. tariff rates for the year. These aggressive, punitive tariffs are creating a stagflationary mix that will almost certainly trigger sticky, unavoidable inflation. Combine that with reckless government deficit spending and sustained political attacks on the independence of central banks, and the systemic risks multiply. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell sits at the center of this pressure. If political interference compromises monetary policy, it significantly raises the odds of a catastrophic global bond market crisis. Then there's the tech sector. Over $400 billion has poured into AI data centers. Is this extreme AI spending genuinely driving a productivity miracle, or are we looking at a massive bubble waiting to pop and wipe out trillions in household wealth? The 2026 economy is currently running on a dangerous, policy-driven sugar high. That makes it incredibly vulnerable to even minor geopolitical shocks. So, zooming out, 2026 is neither an apocalypse nor a golden age. It is an era defined by extreme volatility and rapid systemic shifts. We are entering an era of variable geometry. Variable geometry is a strategic concept where nations, businesses, and individuals must constantly adapt to temporary, shifting alliances and sudden economic swings. You must abandon any expectation of a return to normal. The defining skill of the next decade is letting go of the old rules entirely and mastering how to roll with the punches.